Twitter. Hey Gunny, I would like to know if you could build me a computer for around $1,000 that will give me 144 frames per second on PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. What the So, you want to play video games, and you want to be able to stream them, and you want to be able to do it at high quality, all on the same machine. What does it take? My name is GunnyWorks, and today is going to be the first of a 3-part series where I put together all the tips and tricks that I use and I've learned over the past years in broadcasting to Twitch, how to get the most out of your stream equipment while being able to keep your games at high quality and enjoying them to the best you can. This part of the series is intended for those that want to set up a gaming PC that can offer a high frame rate and handle encoding through open broadcast software, better known as OBS or XSplit. For the sake of education, though, I'm demonstrating these parts because they are all top-shelf performing components that can handle encoding and gaming at the same time. And I have 144 hertz monitors, so if my stuff can push it, most people with 60 FPS monitors should be able to run this stuff. So you can save a lot more money by buying lower priced cases or cheaper or less RAM, smaller SSDs if you don't need a 512. Also, you can get a cheaper 1080 Ti. They can go up to $800, possibly saving a total of around $400 to $500. This build right here on PC Part Picker is roughly $2,450, $2,500. I put it all together over a period of 2 years, and eventually I try to leave everything available to upgrade, because if it's not available to upgrade, then there's really no point in wasting your money on something that you're just going to replace later and won't have a resale value or just isn't worth it overall. So I'm going to start out with giving some tips about making a PC based on a $2,500 budget. I've already stated that, but I want to hit that nail on the head one more time. $2,500 or less. I've done some pretty awesome builds for around $1,800. I don't buy custom computers because you're paying for labor and you're paying for something that you should honestly be getting into yourself because it's actually really fun. The processor that I went with is a Ryzen 7 1800X. Like I said, 3.6 gigahertz at 8 cores. While Ryzen's not notoriously known for its threading, it is the best multi-core bang for the buck on the market right now. So when you're streaming games on a machine, I recommend the 1800X while gaming. If you're just using it for a stream machine, you should be fine with the 1700 or 1700X. If you're trying to like push out maybe a CPU preset of medium to fast. So we'll get to that here in a minute. The motherboard that I am rocking in here is the Asus ROG Strix X370F Gaming. I mean, that's a mouthful, but it is a awesome board, and the reason I went with it simply looks. And it's Asus. Asus has the largest QVL list, and the top 3 reasons, though, are going to be RGB lighting, cable management, and multiple PCI X16 slots, which you can get around the same functionality for $30 to $40 cheaper, but I wanted the looks. I wanted to look good. So you can save some money if you want to cut some bells and whistles off that you may not need. So the PCI X16 slots are the long ones that you would see on your motherboard where your graphics card like a 1080 or a 1080 Ti would plug into. For those of you currently with an Elgato HD60 Pro, the internal PCI capture card, I got some bad news. Most of you that own one, it will not work in a PCI X1. That's the short slot that you normally would plug that into, but it won't work on Ryzen. It's a AMD issue, but Elgato is actually replacing capture cards, so if you guys need to get that done, contact Elgato. I talked to Lieutenant Royal Shrimp over at the Lawbreakers event a few days ago, and he told me that they will take care of that as soon as possible if you contact them. I am using personally in my stream machine the Avermedia HD Gamer Live Gamer 2, HD Live Gamer 2, long names, Live Gamer HD2. There we go. You can also use a Magewell PCI capture card. I know people like Dr. Lupo. He uses Magewell. He's actually really happy with it. They are very pricey, but they're extremely high quality. To find out if your stuff is compatible with it, make sure you contact the manufacturer like Avermedia, Magewell, or Elgato. So the next decision that I went with after the motherboard and the processor was I went with RGB RAM, which, by the way, before somebody yells at me in the comments, I know that it's not on QVL. I got that, but a week of testing, it works. So we went with 32 gigs, which is still overkill. You can save some money here as well by dropping down to 16 gigs if you're going to be gaming only and you're not streaming. You can still stream with 16 gigs, but I like to leave as many resources available as possible because when you start reaching the 80 to 100% range on your use, you start getting some issues that you really don't want to see on your computer, like blue screens of death, crashes in applications, and there's nothing like getting a crispy host from somebody on Twitch and your stream just going to hell because you didn't have enough resources. I chose the Vengeance RGB RAM mainly because of lighting. You can get it with the LPX. You want to go with the low profile. Also, another thing which I'll be getting more into maybe later in the video is knowing who is making your RAM and knowing what the silicon lottery is. The silicon lottery is when a company tasks another company that works like a factory in Taiwan or China, wherever they're having their RAM made, they use different die on their sticks. And right now, from my best experiences are when I have Samsung die RAM. These are Samsung. I don't use Hynix. Hynix is trouble. For me, it's trouble. Right now, I'm clocked in at 3200 megahertz. AMD is running on their new Infinity Mesh platform on their processing software that, you know, the faster the RAM, the better it performs. And like I touched on earlier, multi-threading or hyper-threading. It's a little bit better on Intel than it is on AMD, but the RAM really helps out the processor with getting everything done that you want to get done. So the next thing that I purchased was the EVGA 1080 Ti FTW3. It's one of the fast and best graphics cards on the market with the most performance that you can get. They cost up to $800 depending on which one you want. I got this one on sale for $720 at the time. I recommend the Ti because of the efficiency, and I've had the 1080 Founders Edition when it first came out around last June or July in 2016, and I can tell you that there is a difference in performance, but you should be fine with a 1080. A lot of you are going to be going on to Destiny 2 soon, so you'll probably want a 1080 at least. The next step that I took was choosing the SSD. I went with the Samsung 960 Pro. I'm a big fan of NVMe, fast read and write speeds. I hate loading times, and there's nothing worse than loading, to be honest with you. So when playing a high-performance game or recording, nothing makes a bigger difference than having a fast system. And depending on what you're planning on playing, I recommend a minimum of 256 gigs because some games are around 50 gigs. I play a lot of PlayerUnknown, so, I mean, I don't know what it is off the top of my head. I'm sure it's like 20 to 50 gigs. I know Rainbow Six can get up to 75 gigs if you download the HD pack. Try to make sure that if you're going to do any kind of recording, you have a second solid state or a second hard drive. I prefer solid state. But if you're recording to a solid state, just remember that solid states aren't really... They should perform today. Back in the day, they didn't perform so well when they were reading and writing all the time. That would lower the life expectancy of it. So if you want to keep your PC proficient, make sure that you have two hard drives. One for streaming and playing on, and one for recording too. Now with cooling, I went with the Corsair H100i V2. Gorgeous, but one problem, they're really hard to find with the AMD AM4 bracket for this motherboard. What's really cool is this motherboard had mounting holes for both AM3 Plus and AM4, and I lucked out. The H100i that I ordered came with an AM4 bracket. The H60 and H80i should also work as well with the same bracket. They're both part of the same series, and they're a little bit cheaper if you want to save some money there. So one of the last things that we're going to talk about before we get into the software, and I show you some of the cool stuff with OBS, we're going to talk about the power supply. It's not the most out there component of your computer. Like, you don't really hear anyone bragging about their power supply. You hear them all bragging about their processor or their RAM or their graphics card, right? But let me tell you, it's very important to know what power supply you're choosing for your stuff. So if you go to like PCPartPicker.com, up in the top right, once you choose all your compatible parts that fit together on the list, it's going to tell you how much draw or how many watts your machine is it's gonna recommend. So mine, for example, which I will have the parts listed down below, down there, if you would like to check them out or order any of the parts that I have. Mine calls for 469 watts. Now I am a little bit overkill with a RM850. I get that, but I want to have as much clean energy going to my product, my components, to make sure that I don't have any issues. So let's go ahead and get into software. Here we are. This part of the series that I'm demonstrating is for those of you that are intending to stream and game on the same machine. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and crack open the settings. We're going to go in here. I'm going to go ahead and stretch it out so it looks nice and good and hopefully readable for you guys. So right now we're here in general, and our goal, by the way, our output is going to be 720p at 60 FPS. So I want to take a moment before we go anywhere here, and I want to talk about bitrate versus CPU encoding. So if you don't have a lot of performance or available resources because the game you're playing is intense on the GPU and CPU, you're gonna want to crank your bitrate up out to like 4500 to 6K. So let's just go ahead and, you know, go to output, check everything, it's good. But before we do anything, let's just take a look here. Right now my video bitrate is set to 5500. Audio bitrate, I'm not going to touch it. If you go to like 192 for bitrate, oh god, it gets very, very heavy. And by heavy, I mean your files are going to be huge. So right now the encoder is setting is set to very fast. A lot of you are going to be very fast out of the box. So basically what I'm saying is the faster the preset, and by faster I mean ultra fast, that's going to be the crappiest quality. So if you did ultra fast and somehow you were able to get more than 6,000 kilobits, let's just say like Twitch allowed you to have 10,000, like you wouldn't have to worry about encoding, because instead of your computer compressing the file into images and audio and sending to Twitch, it wouldn't bother compressing anything. It would just send it as is. But we all know that we're like stuck at 6,000, right? So let's just say that we go to 6,000. But first of all, let's change the output mode to advanced. And right now we are making sure that our video is set to 1280 by 720. My canvas for my background, let's just say it's 1080 because my monitor is 1080. And at the moment I'm doing a monitor capture. So there you are, 1280 by 720. I go ahead and just set it to bicubic. I mean, you can go to Lanxos if you want for 32 samples. No, I'm not really worried about it. I have tried the Lanxos with 1920 by 1080. Wasn't really too much different. So back to output. We're in advanced now. So we're going to go ahead and skip the encoder. I'll get into NVIDIA's encoder H264 at some other video. But right now, I want to make sure everybody is on board with what's going on. So the rate control, we're just going to go ahead and just stick to CBR. I'm not going to break down what those are. That's just where you want to be. So we're going to go ahead and set this to 6,000. Okay. And we're going to set the CPU usage to fast or faster. Now, chances are, if you're streaming on the same machine, since I am using a 1800X, I'm just going to let you know right now, there just might be a point where you hit 90 to 100% CPU usage in OBS. It will go up very high, because the slower you go, the more time it's going to take, more resources it's going to take your images and video. And by images, I mean video is images. So you're doing 60 FPS, so it's going to take 60 frames per second, crunch them into a format with audio, and send it to Twitch so it can play to your viewers. So for this one, we're just going to go fast or faster, but I'm not going to actually do any streaming here. Then you're going to go down to profile, and you're going to go main and high, and you're going to look at these two. I use high personally. There's really no difference between main. Apparently the profile main is good for mobile viewers. So I'm going to stick to high. And because I'm capturing the game on this machine, you can go film or animation. Film is for high bitrate, high quality image. In other words, high quality video. And animation is something for, like, you know, see how there's like a lot of space here of gray and white. if you're watching an animation with like a lot of like flat colors or like no gradients and stuff, it's really good for animation. So it helps with deblocking, which makes your images look kind of chunky when you're in low quality. It prevents that from happening. So we're just gonna go ahead and stick to film. You can also go to grainy too, or grain if you want to get rid of some of the graininess. But that right there is where you're gonna want to be for your output settings under advanced up here. Recording, that's all up to you. I'm using the same stream encoder. You could, switch over to MP4, but back to streaming where I was. We'll go ahead and, apply that here in a second. But in output, once that's all done and you have this all set up, you can go ahead and start streaming. No problem. You're ready to go, but we're going to go ahead and head back over to the overview. All right, now that you've set up your overlays and your alerts, now you can get to streaming. Congrats. But there's a couple more things that I do want to touch base on before I let you guys go and I start working on the second and third parts of this video. All right, so now that we have everything set up and we've covered some of the advanced settings, you should be good to go with your streaming PC at this point and your gaming PC. You should be able to do both and at decent to high quality. If you have more questions on how to get your capture cards working or how to get the drivers set up, make sure to hit up your manufacturer, find out what you're looking for, and get it installed. Because if you don't have it installed, it's probably not going to work right. For those of you wondering why I chose not to go with Intel and why I chose to go around the AMD platform with the new Ryzen 7 series, a lot of it has to do with budget. It's going to be the best bang for the buck per core, where in order to get more than 4 cores on Intel, you're going to have to go with X299 or the X99 platform, starting at 6 cores for the 6800K. But that's only 6 cores, and you're paying roughly $350 to $450, depending on which model you go with for the 6 core. And you're going to be missing out on 2 cores, where AMD, you're not going to get the hyper-threading and the tasking that you're going to want out of an Intel all the time, because I will tell you right now, you're going to get a little bit of a better gaming experience on Intel. But if you're going for encoding and gaming at the same time, it's not going to hurt for you to go to AMD. I found the best spot for Intel, like overall, for me was the X99. I did have a 6950X, but honestly, it's just over the top. And there was just times where my PCI lanes just weren't enough for what I needed done. So I just said screw it, and I went with a dual machine setup. So now I've got a smaller machine that I use for capturing while I have one for gaming, and I'm not having any kind of bottlenecking in performance on either of my devices. So if you would like more information on that, make sure you're checking out what Intel has to offer. But for this purpose of this video, I chose to go with AMD. So I have some tips before we close this out and I start working on my next video. I want to make sure you guys know what a QVL is. That's your qualified vendors list. They have them for devices, they have them for solid states, and they have them for memory. The most important one for me that I had issues with was memory, because I was trying to put the square block in the triangle hole. It just didn't work out well. But eventually I got RAM that is in here that isn't actually supposed to be working, but it does. And I could get into the super technical stuff about Samsung die and SK Hynix die. I just know that my Asus motherboard for the AM4 for the X370, it is just much happier with Samsung die. Asus also has the largest QVL list, so if you're a fan of MSI, Gigabyte, ASRock is really good. I did a build for a buddy of mine, Evo. He went with the ASRock Taichi X370. Really good board, worked out of the box, no questions asked. It took 12 hours of memory stress testing on, I think it was HCI MemTest 86. I booted that from a USB, ran it for 12 hours, did all the passes, no errors. So that was great. Same with mine, no errors. Please do not rely on all reviews for motherboards. I'm begging you, because these reviews are from people that are either not experienced, people that are not willing to accept the fact that accepting a new bleeding edge technology has a very high likeliness of not being compatible with what you currently own. Go read it for yourself, go into the forums, go check out other reviews, find people that have actually used it for 2 or 3 months. This board is actually 2 months old. It came out in May. It's a really nice board, and it's an upgraded version of the Asus Prime X370 Pro, which has lights and RGB. It just doesn't look as pretty. So I like the shroud with the RGB over there on the left. So Remember that. Don't forget it. Do not forget. Reviews can screw you. You can miss out on some really good gear if you're accepting the wrong information from an unknowing person that doesn't know what they're talking about. Another thing that I want to tell you guys, for those of you that are trying to get into streaming, please do not take advice from somebody that solely games. They have no idea what it's like to have a processor get completely sapped dry of all of its resources by OBS because they were told by someone who only games that they were getting, you know, X frames per second while gaming. Your OBS is going to take CPU. It's going to. This goes for XSplit as well, or any other program you use. It's going to use your processor for encoding. Now, all this stuff that I have here is around $2,500 bucks. All right, I know it's expensive. It's not affordable for everybody. This took me 2 years to get set up. I ended up buying part. I eventually sold enough stuff out of my 6950X build. It paid for almost 2 builds. We're around $2,500 here. You can get it a lot cheaper. You can get the same performance, even maybe cut a couple corners, maybe go to a 1700X if you want, if that's your thing. You go to a 1080, go to a 1070. They're all good cards. I went with a 1080 Ti because I like really high frame rate, and I like playing PUBG, and PUBG is extremely unoptimized, an amazing game, but I can't wait till finished product. I'm very excited. Also, make sure you're keeping your machine cool. I have the ML120s. I have 6 of them in here, but that is what I do when it comes to cooling. Lots of fans, and make sure you know the difference between a positive or negative or neutral case pressure. I can get into another video later. If you'd like that, leave a comment down below. Let me know, hey, I'd like to learn more about case pressure, and I can test a bunch of things. There's plenty of videos out there, but I'm mainly focused on streaming and helping you guys out. So, the 1080 Ti gets very hot. That's why I was bringing that up. It gets extremely hot. Doesn't matter if it has 60 fans attached to it. It's still going to get hot. GPUs get hot. So run as little software as possible on your machine. I see a lot of people running like Norton Antivirus, Kaspersky, whatever. You can use Windows Defender. It's actually a really good antivirus, and it's built in, and it's free. So you can use that. You don't have to use like extra stuff like that running in the background. You're already going to have, most of you will have the Logitech camera software running in the background. You're going to have Discord. You're going to have OBS. You're going to have Chrome or Firefox or Safari, whatever you're using. And it's going to take CPU and RAM. So if you want to minimize it, try not to have every tab open on the internet. What else do I have here for you? In the next segment that is coming soon, I'm going to reveal my streaming rig, and I'm going to show you my current setup and all the settings I personally have set up in the OBS. I don't use XSplit because I have issues with streaming 3DS sometimes. I need to try it again. Brandon, UGR Gaming, he's a cool dude. He's told me about a cool bunch of improvements they've made. Also, one last thing I want to touch on. Let's talk about RAM. I use 3200 megahertz. I've already said it earlier in the video. 3200. It's above 3000. Ryzen performs optimally, the best above 3000. I've ran it on 2400, which is the default speed or default clock speed on my RAM sticks. I just noticed immediate login, snappiness, really reliable, no problems, over 3000. So if you have any questions for the video or for me, or if there's something you see wrong, let me know. I can fix it, or I can adjust it, or I can address it. Leave a like down below, all right? And hit the sub button with your thumb if you can. Thumbs up if you like it. If you don't like it, put a thumbs down. I don't care. Let me know. That way I know what I can work on here. But the next video is going to be me talking about my streaming machine, and I'm going to tell you guys my best recommendations for getting it set up. The third video is going to be putting both together using a mixer and using a cool mic like this XLR mic. This is the Shure SM7B. It's an amazing mic, high quality. I love it. I think you're really going to enjoy the video on using the mixer because a lot of people don't know what they're getting into. Now the Destiny 2, they want to get into PUBG, H1Z1. Some of them are even playing games like Witcher 3, one of my personal favorites. I just want to make sure everyone's got their stuff working, so whenever I see a stream, I'm seeing a high quality stream. So let me know if any of these settings helped you. Thank you for watching. Gunny out.